Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. And I have a special pleasure in introducing him. He is my childhood friend. We were together in 7th grade and have been in contact since then, more or less. So, here.
Yes, it has been. I don't know. Yeah, he's right. We know each other for the last now maybe more than 50 years. So, the next talk is The Pursuit of Happiness by Dr. Inder Mohan Singh Ji. He is a well-known personality in the Bay Area. I think does not need that much introduction. He is a founder and chairman for the Chardi Kala Foundation, which is sponsoring one of the sponsors for this conference. He's well-known entrepreneur as well as technology and as well as technologist. He's PhD from Yale. He has founded the earlier companies in the field of networking like Kalpana and Excellent. And I have the honor to request him to come and present this presentation on pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Subject, of course, is the pursuit of happiness. We all pursue happiness in our lives. Who doesn't want to be happy? The US Declaration of Independence even defines the pursuit of happiness as a basic human right, along with life and liberty. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everyone spends their life looking for whatever they believe will make them happy. It starts with a little baby. When it's hungry, it wants milk, it cries. The mother nurses it and it's happy. Later, it misses its mother and it starts crying again. The mother comes and holds it and it's happy again and it smiles. The baby gets older and it wants toys instead, perhaps the latest toys that he may have seen on TV. Maybe it's about Doctor Who or what's the other in thing these days? What was the one? Anyway, after they get the toys, the kids will play for a while, but then they get bored. And they want newer toys. As they get older, for teenagers, popularity is a big deal. They want all their friends to think they're really cool. That's what will make them happy. As they get older, popularity with the opposite sex is a bigger drive. As adults, we pursue money and success in our careers, love, marriage, and a family, a bigger house. We still go after toys, but they may be a bit more expensive. A flashy car, neat gadgets like the latest iPhone or the Apple Watch. But it never ends. Did that work? Yeah. Never ends. We're always looking for something else, something that we believe will make us happy. And as we get whatever we want, we may be happy for a while, but the excitement wears off, and we are still unsatisfied, and the search for happiness continues. In a recent study, it was found that when people achieve something that they were striving for, their happiness level goes up, but only for a while, and then it wears off over a few months and drifts back to about the same level as before. They did find a very wide variation in the happiness level of different people at different levels in different areas in the study, but in each case, they tended to get back to whatever the original level was a few months after a major positive event in their life. So positive, something good happens, the happiness goes up, then it's back to the same level. And what they found is that those people who are generally happy go back to that happier level, and those people who are generally sad go down to that other level there. In the words of the author of the study, fame, talent, wealth, beauty, most people think, if I only had these things, I would be happy. But it turns out that the people who have these things are not on average happier than people who lack these things. The grass is always greener on the other side of the street. So all the things that we think will make us happy don't quite get us there. And as we achieve our desires, we find that our original needs grow or change. Wow, that makes us happy. What was that? Anyway, often things don't go our way in spite of all our efforts. Bad things happen. Some things work and some things don't. Manas jatan karat bo bhat, tiske kartab birthe jaat. Gurbani tells us that dukh and sukh, happiness and suffering, are a part of life. Good and bad things are going to happen. Sukh dukh doi dar kapde pehre jaye manukh. So pleasure and pain are the two garments given to us by Vaheguru to be worn in the court of the Lord. So while we chase after things that we expect will make us happy, what occurs is according to his hukam. Good fortune, bad fortune, ups and downs. Jatan bahut sukh ke kiye, dukh ke kiyo na koy. Kah nanak sun re mana, har bhave so hoy. So what's going to happen is going to be according to hukam, the divine will. Our emotional state bounces around with these ups and downs that life hands us. One moment, you're promoted at work, and you're all excited and on top of the world. Next, you go home and maybe you have a fight with your wife and you feel terrible. Kabhu jira up chadta hai, kabhu jaye pyale. Sometimes the soul soars up high in the heavens, and sometimes you go into the depth of despair. So this is life. We go up and down like a yo-yo. We are constantly tossed about on this stormy ocean of life, which Gurbani calls the Bhaujal, a stormy ocean full of waves of Maya, of material existence. We think our happiness or suffering is caused by external events or situations, and that is what we try to control. But in reality, it's how we react to them and how we handle these situations that determines our emotional state much more than what happens to us. There are two significantly different ways we use the word happiness. And think about it. The first is things that give us pleasure. Wealth, success, fame, etc. The words used in Gurbani for this kind of happiness include khushi, hasna, rona, harak and sog. In English, we talk about pleasure and excitement. This kind of happiness is externally driven. It depends on the situation we are in, and it is transient and leads to emotional ups and downs. This is the kind of happiness and suffering that Gurbani teaches us to transcend and to not get caught up in it. There is a deeper kind of happiness, true happiness, that we should aim for. It is constant, it is deeper, it is more an inner mental and spiritual state than something that is externally driven. In referring to this kind of true happiness, Gurbani uses words like anand, sahaj, vigas, like blooming like a flower, chao, as in man chao bhaya prab agam sunya, and chardi kala. Chardi kala, of course, is not in Gurbani, but it has become an important part of our Sikhi vocabulary. Gurbani also uses imagery of lush greenery or haryaval. And there's a beautiful shabad, man harya khidya baag. My mind is a lush garden full of flowers and bloom that describes this kind of blissful state. In English, we talk about bliss, joy, peace, serenity, blossoming forth. And it is this second form of happiness, a constant, joyful, uplifted spiritual state of sahaj and anand that we should aspire for. This is what Gurbani promises us if we follow its teachings in the way we live our lives. In terms of the first kind of happiness, which is transient and externally driven, Gurbani urges us to learn to transcend this kind of dukh and sukh, to treat happiness and sorrow the same. And we heard some of this earlier in the earlier talks. Sukh dukh dono samkar jane aur maan apmana, harak sokte rahe atita, tinjag tat pachana. So we have to remain detached from this kind of sorrow and joy. It is not that we should not feel happiness or sorrow, but that we should not be impacted too much by the ups and downs of life. The Gurmukh learns to maintain an even keel, a level of serenity, of atmak adolta, a state of sahaj no matter what happens. The Gurmukh looks at both happiness and suffering as gifts from Vaheguru. In Japji, Guru Nanak Dev Ji shows us how even when the worst things happen, he can proclaim, Ketya dukh bhuk sadmar, ebi daat teri datar. So how do we go about achieving this second kind of true happiness that we have been talking about? The most basic strategy that Gurbani gives us for true happiness is Naam Simran, a constant remembrance and awareness of the divine presence. And we have referred to various aspects of this already in several talks. This is achieved through an integrated process that includes 1, Naam Japna or meditation on the divine name, 2, study and reflection on Gurbani or Path and Gurbani Vichar, 3rd, Kirtan, 4, prayer or Ardas. And there are other components, but these are the major ones, I think. And I'm kind of including them all in Naam Simran. This leads to a state of Sahaj or equipoise and Chardi Kala, where one can transcend pleasure and pain and maintain an even keel, even through the ups and downs of life. Kabir har ka simran jo kare so sukhiya sansar, etot kade na dole jis rakhe sirjanhar. As you practice this, the Creator is there to help you and then protects you from all these waves in this Bhojal ocean. Okay, this next slide, it sketches out the process of transformation that Naam Simran can bring about in our lives. On the horizontal axis, we are showing spiritual growth through Naam Simran over time. From the initial state of a manmukh to that of a gurmukh, an ideal gurmukh in that corner, top right corner. And the vertical, it shows you your happiness level. So as you can see, we start out as a manmukh, being bounced up and down all the time, and we are generally kind of unhappy. We are suffering in various ways. As we make spiritual progress, the average level of happiness goes up, and the bouncing up and down goes down. So we have a more of a constant state. We do go down when something bad happens, but we're not impacted as much. We don't go as far as back down, and we snap right back. And we don't go overboard when something good happens either. Don't get carried away with it. So you get a little more stable. And in the ideal state, of course, you're constantly at this state of Chardi Kala. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. So we start out a little to the left and we move towards the right by Vaheguru's grace. Okay. So Naam Simran, as we defined it, is the core basic path for achieving true happiness, according to the Guru. But now we will look at a few other specific aspects, which are all tied back to Naam Simran in one way or another. We start off with the idea that we learn how to lean on him through Ardas, always depend on Vaheguru. Sharan Vicharna, depending on him, praying to him, knowing that he's always there and depending on him to take care of us. Like this beautiful Shabad, Uthat Sukhiya, Baitat Sukhiya, Bhavni Lage Ja Aise Bujhiya, Rakha Ek Hamara Swami, Sagal Kata Ka Antarjami, and goes on to talk about Soya Chinta, Jage Chinta, Ghar Sukh Vasya, Bahar Sukh Vasya. So at all times, through all the variations in our life, you manage to stay in a state of sukh, of peace, because you have this mantra, this realization, Rakha Ek Hamara Swami. That's the secret. Vaheguru is always there to protect us and take care of us. Prayer or Ardas is a great source of spiritual strength and confidence. And it's also an important part of building a very special, strong personal relationship with Vaheguru through Ardas and prayer. Because we address him directly, it's a dialogue with God, it's a conversation, and in the process we are building our relationship with him. Next, we look at another key component of the strategy for true happiness, that is recognizing his hukam. Knowing that all that happens is according to the divine will. This is an important part of dealing with the down parts of the cycle in particular, to live in tune with his hukam and to accept it cheerfully. This ka hukam bhuj sukh hoye, as Guruji says, understanding his hukam leads to peace and happiness. We have to accept gracefully whatever happens, both good and bad, as his hukam, to tad bhave sai bhali kar, to sada salamat nirankar. Now this is one of the most important components to building this state of constant happiness. Gratitude. Let us remember him not only in times of trouble, but also when things go well, and learn to thank him for all our blessings. Most of the time we think of God only when things go wrong. We treat him like a spare tire to be pulled out when we have a flat. Instead, we should think of him as the steering wheel of our life, who is needed all the time to guide and shape our lives. When something goes wrong, think of him and offer your prayers to him. When something goes well, think of him and thank him. Much of the time we get unhappy because we feel we don't have something that others have. We compare ourselves with others in various ways. A billionaire like Larry Ellison, with a huge house, which cost him more than $200 million, when he looks at someone with a still bigger house, and he's reported to be unhappy that he doesn't have the biggest house in the world. Maybe it's only the second or third biggest. So that's kind of our situation at various levels. So we can always find someone who has more. We forget that there are so many more people who don't have anywhere near as much as what we have. If you only stop to count our blessings and remember to be grateful for them, this can be one of the most important steps towards a happy life. Even when there's nothing special or unusual happening, there are so many things to be grateful for. I don't know how many of you can see this slide, but it's just shows how many, many different things there are that we can be thankful for at all times. It's a key secret to true happiness, to count our blessings and be grateful. So one thing that I try to do, but I don't always remember to do it, is to go over all the good things that happened during the day before going to sleep, before Kirtan Soila, and to thank Waheguru for them, and in the morning, thank Waheguru for another beautiful day. The whole day goes better when I do remember to do it, at the two ends of it. Another very important step, which is something that Jesse is going to go into a lot more detail, so I'll just touch on it. It's to let go of any grudges or anger that lingers in our hearts towards anyone. Par ka bura na rakho cheet, tumko dukh nahi bhai meet. Holding something, anger against somebody else is only going to hurt ourselves. We all have situations where someone has hurt us in some way, but if we carry that sense of hurt or anger in our heart, it's a major obstacle to our own happiness and peace of mind. You even sit down for Naam Simran and your mind runs off and you can't concentrate. It hurts us more than the other person. So holding a grudge against someone is like giving that person rent-free space inside your own head. Inside the house, inside your own house of your body, you're taking one whole room in there and saying, here, you can come live in it free. Because that's your idea of taking revenge against the person, and you're doing it to yourself, right? Here is another key source of real happiness, seva and giving. There was a study of people in different professions that looked at their levels of personal happiness. What they found was that people involved in caring for others had the highest level of happiness. Those working for NGOs, often working in poor areas in the third world, and members of the health sector, such as nurses, dedicating themselves to serving others and making them happier, they lead more fulfilling, satisfied lives than successful people focused on doing well in their own careers. There's more happiness in giving than in receiving. Gurbani tells us that the spiritual enlightened beings take delight in doing things for others. Brahm Gyani Paropkar Umaha. Now, of course, this idea of giving or serving others works if it's voluntary, if you're forced to do something that people are actually unhappy with. Now let us look at, we don't have a lot of time, but we'll go briefly through this. Let us look at a kind of a paradoxical message from Gurbani about happiness. And Ras Sahib starts out with this, Dukh Daru Sukh Rog Bhaya. Happiness can be a disease and suffering can be a cure. Dukh Daru, how can it be? How can suffering be good and happiness be a disease? So there are several downsides to things that we consider as sources of happiness and good fortune. So when good things happen, we think they'll make us happy. Sometimes we take credit for our good fortune, think it's all our own doing. I did it rather than hukam. We get arrogant. We look down upon others. It strengthens our home or ego. And we know from Gurbani, as again we heard several times today, home is one of the biggest obstacles on the spiritual path. Home naave naal virodh hai, doi naam se ek tha hai. We see this even in the religious field where some of the most dedicated religious people start getting a holier-than-thou attitude and start looking down upon others and being harshly critical. There's this shabad by Kabir about religious leaders. कबीर साखा सिख साखा बहुते किए केसों कियो ना मीत चाले थे हर मिलन को बीचे अटक्यो चीत. Then when we get something, we want more, we get greedy and envious. And we also the more good things we have, the more entangled we get in them, and life gets more and more complicated. If you have more money, you have to invest it wisely. Maybe you have to hire advisors. You have to watch out for scammers who want to cheat you out of your money. You have to worry about taxes. You have to consult tax specialists to set up clever tax shelters. If you have a huge, beautiful mansion, you have to deal with maintenance, get alarm systems. If you're in India, you have to hire a chowkidar. If you're leaving town, you have to get somebody to house sit for you. So everything comes with its own entanglements and downsides. Vade vade jo disa rog, tinko vyapa chinta rog. So the big and famous, the rich and famous have their own worries, and they can be more unhappy than people who have less. So for all these reasons, seeming good fortune can in fact distract us from the spiritual path and actually keep us from achieving real happiness in our life. So the very things we chase for happiness actually keep us from being happy. They can keep us from being unhappy. This doesn't say you should not get any of those good things, but you have to watch out. Those who are blessed with these things, and that is most of us here in many, many ways, wealth, various levels of wealth, success, happy family, the more God blesses us with worldly happiness, the harder we need to work on our spiritual side to inoculate ourselves against these downsides of happiness. We really need an extra dose of Nam Simran and a strong sense of gratitude to handle the good fortune. So in closing, okay, this just says we don't actually need to look for the unhappiness. I'm going to skip this for lack of time. Just go to the last slide here. Guruji shows us the state of a person who has followed Gurbani's teachings, has gotten to that stage we talked about. And it's described as dukh nahi sab sukhi hai re, eka eki nete, bura nahi bhala hi hai re, har nahi sab jete. So this is the state we can aspire to. He has no pain, he's totally happy and at peace. And the key thing is he God's everywhere and in everything. Eka eki nete. Bura nahi sab bhara hi hai re, har nahi sab jete. He does not see anyone as evil, all are good. There's no defeat, he's totally victorious. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. I'll take some questions now.
Thank you, Mohan, excellent talk on pursuit of happiness. I have received multiple questions here. Let us see. Okay, the first one, I think you have already referred to that. There are two questions on the same subject. That how does this pursuit of happiness relate to Dukh Daru Sukh Rog Pyas? Some explanation.
Yeah, I think we have addressed
You mentioned
that.
that.
Sure.
So
That was probably written before I got that. That was probably written before I got to that part.
Right. The next question is not happiness about making other people's life better as well? If so, why Naam is so supreme, since it only makes your life better and not others?
No, Naam actually changes. Naam Simran, this whole process is a personal transformation process of growth. And Naam enlightened people are in fact, can do some of the best paropkar and seva, as we heard here, Brahm Jnani Paropkaro Maha. So they want to, first of all, they want to share the greatest gift, which is Naam itself, Aap Jape Avra Naam Japave. And they are always out there doing service and seva in many ways. So I think it's more than just a personal growth. It's just for oneself. You may work on yourself, but as you are transformed, that's going to help a lot of other people as well.
There is another question. Why? I think in your one of the graphs you showed on the x-axis that we start from Manmukh and going towards Gurmukh. The question is, why do we start from a state of Manmukh when we when we're coming from our Creator, should not we start from a more neutral state?
Well, I think different people will start at different points. Some are blessed by Vaheguru in different ways. There's a different level of grace. But without a guru, if we are depending only on ourselves, if we don't have positive spiritual influence of a guru in some form, we are likely to be very inner-centered, self-centered. The center of the world is I. Well, actually, the traditional belief in India, and I think Gurbani refers to it a lot, is that when the baby is born, it's actually in tune with Vaheguru. It doesn't have any haume. As it gets older, it gets a sense saying, it doesn't know that it's different from its mother. It thinks the whole world is the same. And slowly it develops the sense, this is me and this is someone else. And that is the start of the problem. That's where haume starts. So maybe you don't get born as a manmukh, but you can develop into a manmukh very quickly if you don't have positive spiritual influence.
There is another question. You showed a slide on I am grateful for, the one with all the things to be grateful in a circle. Is that something you are recommending as an exercise we all do to remind ourselves of the things we have?
I am recommending that we all think of our blessings and thank Vaheguru. How we do it, I don't know. If that slide helps you, that's fine. But there are many ways. Part of it is just looking at anything good that happens and remembering Vaheguru and stopping to count your blessings and not just think of things we don't have that we want, but rather think of things that we do have as well.
There is another one. You talked about gratitude, steering wheel. Where does love for Guru Sahib Ji interacts in this journey for pursuit of happiness?
Oh, it's very central. Love for Vaheguru is very central to the whole Naam Simran process. Without that, Naam Simran doesn't work. I didn't pull it out as a list because you can start making lists of things. But in Gurbani, love is at the center of everything. As Guru Gobind Singh Ji says, "Jin prem kiyo tin hi prab payo." So you can't get on that path without love, and the word bhav and pyar and rang, and it's full of it. There's so many beautiful poems describing the love affair between the self as a bride and Vaheguru as the beloved husband. It's just steeped into Gurbani everywhere. So that is central to this whole practice of Naam Simran. And an important part of loving Vaheguru and being on this Sikhi path is seeing Vaheguru in everybody. So Vaheguru is not only in our own hearts. As we develop that divine presence within ourselves, we also see God everywhere. Last Shabad Chagasina, Eka Eki Nete. And that's the process of developing love for others, and everything flows from that.
There is a question which is somewhat related to the topic. It says, in your opinion, can you change the hukam with ardas?
That's up to Vaheguru. You can only pray to him. Its hukam is in his hand, but he also listens to you. And there are some shabas describing how the bhagats, God actually has to listen to their bhagats. And Kiki Agasi, I have you in my trap, how will you escape me now? How does the words go? Kaise chhadaoge hun? So Vaheguru is under the control of the real bhagats, the ones, but you have to really get up there to that stage like the Guru, when there is no separation between the Sikh and Vaheguru.
Okay, in one of the slides you showed on forgiveness, one of the strategies, and there is a question here, how we can forgive people like Indira Gandhi, Aurangzeb, or Hitler?
I think Jesse is going to address this whole issue in much more depth, so I shouldn't go too much. But basically, forgiveness doesn't mean that you don't recognize evil. It doesn't mean that you don't fight for justice. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji clearly showed us that you can, but you do it without hatred in your heart. You don't hold the grudge in your heart. You work to overcome the evil and take actions against it without hating the person. And if you have looked at the Zafarnama by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, he's willing to discuss with Aurangzeb all the things that he did wrong and how it can be worked out, and he's willing to sit down and talk to him, but he doesn't show any hatred. And he never did show hatred in his life. I mean, he has all these uplifting, positive shabas throughout his life in spite of all the things that happened to him in his life. Losing his children, losing his everything else that he went through his father to begin with, and he still sings God's praises all the time.
And actually now I have just my question. Is that you have shown very practical strategies for the pursuit of happiness. So is it a lifelong process, or in other words, when do you know that you are happy enough?
It's very much a lifelong process. Only a few of us will be lucky enough to reach that other end. But